Welcome to Science, to Sleep By. Tonight, we drift into the dark silence between the stars, to a story that feels both near and far, a countdown not to hope, but to possibility, a scientific whisper about what could happen if the cosmos turned its back on us. This is Science to Sleep By, where truth and imagination meet beneath the night sky. Let's begin with a mystery called 3I Atlas. The night sky over the northern hemisphere was quiet, a vast black sea of stillness speckled with the ancient light of dying suns. Telescopes across the world were performing their silent duties, sweeping through the endless dark like lighthouses scanning an invisible ocean. It was during one of these routine surveys in the early months of 2025 that something unusual entered the field of vision of the Atlas Survey Telescope atop Mauna Loa in Hawaii. A dim point of light, faint and fleeting, appeared for just a moment before slipping into the data stream. The automated detection system flagged it as a potential near-Earth object, perhaps a small asteroid or fragment. But when scientists reviewed the initial readings, their calm professionalism turned into quiet disbelief. The object's velocity didn't match anything in the solar neighborhood. It was moving too fast, far beyond the gravitational leash of our sun, slicing through the system at an angle that defied orbital logic. They named it 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object ever observed passing through our solar system, following in the mysterious wake of 1I Oumuamua and 2I Borisov. But unlike those earlier visitors, this one arrived with a presence that felt deliberate, almost theatrical. The brightness curve didn't fluctuate like tumbling space rock. Its rotation seemed unnervingly stable, its surface reflectivity unexpectedly high, suggesting metallic composition. The initial spectroscopic analysis hinted at alloys unknown to Earth's natural processes, reflecting light in narrow, unnatural bands. The first whispers began circulating through observatories. This might not be a fragment of nature's chaos at all. Astronomers from Chile's Cerro Tololo Observatory Cross verified the readings within hours. Their data confirmed the object's hyperbolic trajectory, meaning it was not bound to the sun. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it had come from somewhere beyond the reach of our star's gravity, traveling for untold millennia through the frozen emptiness between systems. It wasn't merely visiting, it was passing through a cosmic messenger on a one-way journey across the galaxy. Yet something in its path raised eyebrows. Its approach vector. Instead of slicing cleanly through the solar system like a stray rock, 3I Atlas seemed to be bent ever so slightly toward the ecliptic plane, the thin, invisible sheet where all the planets orbit. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory ran simulations, trying to fit the anomaly into known parameters: gravitational tugs from Jupiter, thermal radiation effects, solar wind interactions, but the numbers refused to cooperate. Even accounting for all the known physics, there remained a residual acceleration, a subtle push not accounted for by natural forces. A familiar unease began to surface in the scientific community. They had seen this before. In 2017, with Oumuamua, Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb had proposed that such an unexplained acceleration could mean artificial propulsion, perhaps a thin, light sail-like structure pushed by starlight. The idea was ridiculed at the time, dismissed as romantic speculation. But now, as 3I Atlas slipped further into focus, the same strange behavior was unfolding again. And this time, it was stronger, more pronounced, and far harder to ignore. Telescopes around the world began tracking it obsessively. Observatories from the Canary Islands, Arizona, and South Africa coordinated around-the-clock effort. Images poured in a faint, elongated silhouette, unlike any known asteroid, stretching like a silver shard against the cosmic backdrop. Its rotation rate was oddly synchronized, neither chaotic nor random. A regular pulse of brightness emerged every 37 minutes, as if the object were turning deliberately to face the sun, charging itself on its journey inward. The pulse became known as the Atlas rhythm, and within weeks, it dominated astrophysical discussion boards and research forums. The discovery made international headlines. The media framed it as another interstellar visitor, a harmless curiosity, a rock from another star drifting past our cosmic doorstep. But within the scientific community, the tone was different. The data was too clean, too intentional. One team from the European Southern Observatory even proposed that the object's albedo, its surface reflectivity, suggested polished, metallic planes, not the rough, dusty crusts of comets or asteroids. And beneath the public statements of calm, measured science, private communications between researchers began to show hints of worry. Some wondered aloud if 3I Atlas was transmitting, or worse, observing. Weeks passed. The object continued its path, now well within Saturn's orbit, traveling at a blistering speed of over 96,000 miles per hour. The light curve showed no outgassing, no plume of dust, no tail, meaning it was not a comet. It emitted no heat signature expected of a sun-warmed rock. Instead, it reflected sunlight in a spectral pattern resembling structured metal. Radio telescopes listening in on its trajectory reported intermittent static bursts, not strong enough to be called a signal, but not random enough to be ignored. The SETI Institute briefly trained its Allen telescope array toward the object, capturing faint narrow-band emissions that seemed to repeat at regular intervals. They logged them as anomalies, pending further verification, but the data was quietly shared with NASA and the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics for further analysis. On a late spring night, a team at the Subaru telescope in Hawaii noticed that the object's brightness flickered more sharply than before. The change was periodic, almost rhythmic. For 6 hours, it pulsed at precise intervals, each flash separated by exactly 2 minutes. The team at first assumed it was an instrumental glitch, but after cross-checking data from 2 other observatories, they realized the pattern was real. A 2-minute cycle, repeating flawlessly as though ticking down to something unseen. The discovery ignited debate. Was it simply a reflection of sunlight off a rotating body? Or was it, as some quietly proposed, a transmission, a structured beacon sweeping across the solar system like a lighthouse beam? No one dared to say it publicly, but whispers grew in private scientific circles. The term artificial periodicity appeared in internal memos. A few astrophysicists, echoing the controversial arguments of low years earlier, suggested that 3I Atlas could be a relic, a probe, or a derelict craft, perhaps launched by a civilization that had vanished before humanity even evolved. By midsummer, as it neared the orbit of Mars, the data took a darker turn. Instruments detected microbursts of gamma radiation coinciding with its rotational phase. Small, harmless doses, but statistically consistent. A pulse every 2 minutes, paired with gamma spikes. The phenomenon was unprecedented. Natural objects don't behave this way. Something about 3I Atlas was operating beyond standard astrophysical explanation. The term, the arrival, began trending among research teams, symbolizing both fascination and foreboding. Amid the quiet hum of computer servers, the world's most advanced telescopes continued their vigil. Day by day, 3I Atlas grew brighter as it reflected sunlight with increasing intensity. Its spectral signature flattened into near-perfect uniformity, like polished silver catching fire in the sun's glare. For a brief moment, as it reached perihelion, its closest approach to the sun, its brightness rivaled that of distant stars visible to the naked eye. Then, without warning, the rhythmic flashes stopped. It was as if the object had noticed it was being watched. Astronomers scrambled to recalibrate instruments, fearing sensor failure. But every telescope reported the same thing: silence. The pulse had ceased. Its light had dimmed slightly, its reflection pattern altered. In a single rotation, the object's rhythm had vanished, replaced by stillness. It was as though 3I Atlas had entered a new phase, one that defied human interpretation. On the world, scientists watched in uneasy awe. They knew they were witnessing something profound, an event unlike any in recorded astronomy. A messenger had arrived from the dark between the stars, carrying within it mysteries older than humanity itself. Whether by design or chance, it had chosen this moment in time, this species, this fragile blue planet, as its witness. And though no one could yet say what it meant, one truth was becoming clear: 3I Atlas was not merely passing through, It was performing something that seemed deliberate, rhythmic. An eerily aware .it was the first signal in the countdown none of them yet knew had begun the moment the discovery of 3I Atlas was confirmed. The world's most powerful observatories turned their eyes to the sky. Its path across the heavens was not like any other visitor humanity had ever tracked. Each hour, the strange object inched closer to the heart of our solar system, and with every new reading, its motion seemed to challenge the laws of celestial mechanics themselves. At first glance, its trajectory appeared simple, a hyperbolic curve slicing through the plane of the planets, but when scientists plotted the data across several nights, the curve shifted. Not wildly, not dramatically, but with a precision that left even the most cautious analysts unsettled. It was as if 3I Atlas were responding to something unseen, adjusting itself by minute degrees. Like a traveler correcting its course through an invisible current, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena initiated continuous monitoring using their Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex. The object's position was triangulated by radar echoes, though faint due to its immense speed and distance. As readings accumulated, software models began to falter. The predicted path failed to align with reality by margins too large to be dismissed as measurement error. Even after accounting for solar radiation, pressure and gravitational perturbations from Jupiter and Saturn, 3I Atlas was veering slightly off the expected course. Each deviation, though small, appeared deliberate, not random, but cumulative, like a controlled correction. The possibility that it was under intelligent guidance, though not spoken aloud at first, began to whisper through the minds of those studying it. The European Space Agency's control center in Darmstadt, Germany, analysts cross-checked the American data with their own. Their conclusions mirrored NASA's. The object's acceleration could not be entirely natural. An internal report, marked confidential, speculated that a non-gravitational force might be acting upon it. That phrase, in the language of astrophysics, carried weight. Non-gravitational meant something else was pushing it. Perhaps sublimation of volatile ices, as seen in comets, or perhaps something even stranger. But the object showed no evidence of outgassing, no coma, no tail, no infrared signature of heat or material loss. In essence, it was moving as if guided by an invisible hand. By mid-May, the object had passed the orbit of Jupiter. Its relative velocity was decreasing slightly, though not enough to suggest it was being captured by the sun's gravity. Instead, the reduction followed a smooth, mathematically elegant curve that matched no natural deceleration known in planetary dynamics. Astronomers began comparing it to earlier interstellar visitors, first Oumuamua in 2017, which had exhibited a similar unexplained acceleration, and then Borisov in 2019, a more conventional comet that behaved as expected. 3I Atlas, however, was something different entirely. It appeared to be adjusting itself, aligning its motion with the ecliptic plane, the same plane where Earth and its neighboring planets revolve around the Sun. That alignment could not be accidental. The odds of an interstellar body naturally adjusting its path to mirror the orbital geometry of our solar system were infinitesimally small. Scientists at Harvard's Center for Astrophysics began privately modeling what would happen if such alignment continued. The results were astonishing. If the trend persisted, 3I Atlas's trajectory would bring it within a few million miles of Earth's orbit by late summer, close enough for radar imaging, and potentially close enough for gravitational influence to be measured. The press was not informed. The story remained a quiet storm among astronomers, shared only in encrypted emails and late-night video calls. At the same time, amateur astronomers around the world joined the chase. High-powered backyard telescopes in Arizona, Chile, and South Africa captured faint images of a pinprick of light gliding through the constellations of Sagittarius and Capricornus. The brightness varied slightly from night to night, but what captivated observers was the object's spectral consistency. The light it reflected lacked the irregular flicker typical of tumbling asteroids. Instead, it shimmered with smooth periodicity, as though large, flat surfaces were rotating under the sun. In online forums, enthusiasts speculated wildly, some claiming it was a derelict alien probe, others insisting it was an elaborate hoax. But professional astronomers knew better. The data was authentic, and it pointed toward one conclusion that defied comfort. 3I Atlas was following a path too stable to be coincidence. When the Minor Planet Center officially updated its orbital parameters, the community erupted. The new data showed a measurable inward drift toward the solar equatorial plane, a motion that could not be explained by any known gravitational influence. Theories multiplied. One hypothesis suggested that 3I Atlas might be hollow, its motion affected by internal pressure differentials caused by solar heating. Another proposed that it might be coated in highly reflective material, amplifying solar radiation pressure in complex ways. Yet even these explanations failed to account for the precision of its movement. It was as though the object knew exactly where it wanted to go. As the trajectory refined, so did the mystery. NASA's Deep Space Network attempted active radar pings, hoping to map the object's shape by echo return. Most attempts failed. The signal-to-noise ratio was too low, but one transmission, recorded from Canberra's 70-meter antenna, returned a faint, delayed echo with an irregular modulation pattern. Some claimed it was simply the artifact of atmospheric interference. Others noticed that the timing of the return corresponded almost perfectly with the 2-minute brightness cycle previously observed from optical telescopes. If the reflection wasn't random, then perhaps the object was responding or at least interacting with incoming signals in a structured way. Meanwhile, a parallel project was launched at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center, the Atlas Trajectory Reconstruction Initiative. Using all available positional data, the team attempted to trace 3I Atlas's origin. The results placed its point of entry near the constellation of Lyra, roughly the same region from which Oumuamua had come years earlier. That coincidence ignited speculation. Could both objects have originated from the same distant system, or were they fragments of a single ancient structure, cast adrift across interstellar space? When the data was plotted backward through galactic motion models, it suggested an origin beyond the local stellar neighborhood, possibly from a region between stars in the Vega cluster. Whatever it was, it had been traveling for millions, perhaps billions, of years before crossing paths with our Sun. At the Space Telescope Science Institute, researchers analyzed Hubble data taken from deep ultraviolet scans. To their astonishment, the spectral pattern from 3I Atlas contained faint absorption lines inconsistent with any known combination of metals or silicates. It appeared to have traces of isotopes not found in our solar system, elements formed under conditions far different from those of our Sun. Some called it evidence of a unique natural process. Others whispered the unspoken word that hung like static in every room where the data was discussed: artificiality. The next surprise came from Chile's Atacama Large Millimeter Array ALMA. While scanning for thermal emissions, ALMA recorded something else: a faint, structured oscillation in the radio spectrum, repeating every 37 minutes, perfectly matching the rotational period previously observed in reflected light. It was as if the object's motion, energy, and radiation were synchronized by design. The scientists, cautious and skeptical by nature, hesitated to draw conclusions, but the implications loomed large. If the pattern was intentional, then 3I Atlas might not merely be an interstellar fragment. It might be transmitting, guiding itself, or following a command imprinted long ago by an intelligence we could not yet comprehend. Government agencies began taking interest. The Pentagon's Space Surveillance Network classified several reports, citing national security considerations. Though publicly silent, their private briefings to NASA and the European Space Agency urged prudent monitoring of the object's path. The fear wasn't invasion, but interference. What if this interstellar traveler somehow affected satellites, communications, or planetary fields as it passed? It was not a question anyone could answer. In the midst of this quiet global anxiety, a remarkable event occurred. The object's acceleration shifted again, this time ever so slightly, toward the Sun-Earth Lagrange point, a gravitational balance zone where satellites often reside. The odds of such a maneuver occurring by chance were astronomical. It was as though 3I Atlas had found the one equilibrium spot in the chaotic sea of space and was gently steering itself toward it. NASA released a cautious statement calling it a fascinating but unexplained dynamical behavior within internal channels. The phrase used was far less restrained, active guidance. As the days passed, the orbital simulations showed one more twist. The object's path intersected Earth's orbital plane precisely 43 days ahead. It would not collide, but it would pass close enough to measure magnetic and gravitational interactions in unprecedented detail. And as it approached, astronomers noticed something unnerving. The object's brightness pulse, once steady at 2-minute intervals, had begun to quicken. The pulses now arrived every 90 seconds, then 80, then 75. The rhythm was accelerating, as if counting down to something neither human nor random. No one could say whether it was natural or constructed. But one fact became clear. 3I Atlas was not simply passing through the solar system as a wanderer from afar. It was tracing a path that implied purpose, a trajectory that mirrored awareness. The more scientists studied its motion, the more it seemed to watch them back. An ancient traveler tracing a deliberate route through the clockwork of the planets, a path too elegant to belong to chance. The debate began quietly, almost in whisper, carried through encrypted emails and late-night video calls between observatories that seldom spoke outside formal conferences. At first, scientists hesitated to even frame the question aloud. Was 3I Atlas a product of natural cosmic mechanics, or was it something deliberately made? The implications were too vast, too heavy, and too far-reaching for an empirical community built on caution and restraint. Yet as data accumulated, as every new observation contradicted the expectations of physics, the silence that once protected scientific caution began to erode. What if the universe had finally answered a question humanity had only dared to ask? In theory, from the earliest analyses, the object's composition refused to conform to any known natural signature. Spectroscopy from NASA's Infrared Telescope facility revealed an albedo higher than any recorded for a carbonaceous or metallic asteroid. It was reflecting sunlight with the efficiency of a mirror, yet without the characteristic spectral noise of oxidized surfaces or crystalline ice. When researchers plotted the spectral reflectance curve, it resembled the flat, featureless band of polished alloys, not the rugged irregularity of rock. Some hypothesized it might be an exotic mineral composite formed in an alien star system, perhaps the product of a supernova shockwave. Others, less constrained by convention, suggested that the data hinted at engineered material, a surface smoothed, coated, or constructed for durability against cosmic radiation. Meanwhile, rotation readings deepened the mystery. 3I Atlas was spinning, but not chaotically. Most natural bodies tumble unpredictably as they travel through space, their irregular shapes causing uneven rotation. But this object rotated with clockwork precision, a uniform spin rate that remained stable for weeks without measurable variation. It was not the motion of a random fragment. It was the motion of an object balanced around its center of mass. When scientists simulated possible shapes that could produce such behavior, one configuration stood out: a long, thin body with flattened surfaces, possibly spindle-like or disc-like in nature. The resemblance to light sail concept's thin, metallic sheets designed to travel on radiation pressure was impossible to ignore. This resemblance reignited an old controversy. In 2017, when Oumuamua had flashed briefly through the solar system, Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb had argued that its anomalous acceleration might indicate artificial origin. He was dismissed at the time by peers who viewed the claim as speculative. Yet now, nearly a decade later, another object exhibited the same strange features, amplified and undeniable. When Loeb was invited to privately consult with NASA's trajectory analysis team, he reportedly said only one thing: it's behaving as though it knows the rules of physics, but chooses to bend them. The phrase spread quickly, capturing the unease that even the most rational scientists felt. 3I Atlas's acceleration, its spectral uniformity, its improbable alignment with the ecliptic, all of it hinted at purpose. Yet in science, Purpose was the one concept that could not be measured. The challenge was to find evidence that pointed one way or the other. Evidence that could prove whether this object was a wandering child of the stars or a messenger from the unknown. At the Goddard Space Flight Center, engineers began reconstructing theoretical propulsion models that could mimic 3I Atlas's movement. One scenario proposed a natural outgassing mechanism, jets of sublimating ice releasing gas that produce thrust. But the thermal imaging from the James Webb Space Telescope ruled this out. There was no detectable vapor, no plume, no exhaust signature of any kind. Another team considered whether asymmetric solar heating might generate a Yarkovsky effect strong enough to alter the trajectory, but again, the data refused to comply. The acceleration was too smooth, too directed. It was like comparing a breeze to a guided wind. Then came the radio mystery. The SETI Institute's Allen Telescope Array detected a narrow band emission near 1420 MHz, the hydrogen line, a frequency often used in theoretical discussions of extraterrestrial communication. The signal was faint and intermittent, barely above noise level, but its timing corresponded with 3I Atlas's rotational phase. It repeated every 37 minutes, fading in and out with uncanny precision. When the signal vanished, SETI declared it likely terrestrial interference, but behind closed doors, analysts admitted the pattern was unusual. The modulation was structured, with harmonics that suggested information density rather than random scatter, across the ocean. At the European Southern Observatory, another team noticed something peculiar in the optical data. The reflected light from the object exhibited polarization, the kind of uniform polarization that occurs when light reflects off a smooth, metallic surface at a consistent angle. Polarization of that degree is rarely found in natural space bodies, especially those tumbling through sunlight. Yet here it was an object maintaining a consistent reflection profile, as though deliberately oriented to the sun. The deeper astronomers peered into its behavior, the more they encountered a pattern that resisted randomness. Some began to call it the discipline, term that described the object's unyielding stability, its perfect rotational rhythm, its unwavering trajectory. It moved through the vacuum not as debris, but as a thing designed for endurance. The precision was intimidating. Every wobble corrected itself, every light fluctuation adhered to a mathematical interval. In celestial terms, it was too elegant to be accidental. Philosophers of science entered the debate. Could a natural process ever produce something indistinguishable from design? The universe had, after all, created crystalline structures, symmetrical galaxies, and molecular chains that mimicked logic. But this object seemed to act to adjust in ways that implied feedback, control, and perhaps even awareness. The thought was almost unbearable to those grounded in materialist physics. To suggest intelligence was to step into speculation, and speculation was an unforgivable trespass in data-driven science. Yet the line between evidence and interpretation was growing thinner with every new observation. As the public learned of 3I Atlas through media leaks, the narrative split in two. To the general audience, it was a curiosity. Another, Umawamio, a mysterious visitor that posed no threat. To the scientific elite, it was a problem that refused to solve itself. Debates raged in secret symposia under non-disclosure agreements. One faction insisted that the object must be natural, its peculiarities exaggerated by limited observation. Another argued that the cumulative data pointed toward engineering of staggering sophistication, a craft or relic designed to survive interstellar flight for epochs beyond comprehension. The engineering hypothesis raised deeper questions. If 3I Atlas were built, who or what built it? And for what purpose? The object's apparent lack of active communication, its absence of visible energy output, and its silence in all measurable frequencies gave rise to the theory of the dead probe. Perhaps it was not alive or operational, but a remnant, an interstellar fossil drifting endlessly between the stars. If so, then humanity had stumbled upon the relic of a civilization that might have perished before Earth even cooled from its molten infancy. The idea was haunting. We were looking at the ashes of intelligence, preserved in the cold vacuum of space. But another school of thought, more daring still, proposed that 3i Atlas might not be dead at all, merely dormant, a passive object awaiting a specific trigger, a condition, or a frequency to awaken its systems. Its increasing proximity to the Sun, its shift toward the ecliptic, and its growing radio anomaly all seemed to form part of a larger sequence. The notion of a reactivation event began to surface in restricted discussions. What if the object had sensed the presence of technology, our probes, our radar, our constant radio chatter, and was subtly responding? To test the idea, NASA's Deep Space Network initiated a series of controlled radar transmissions directed at 3i Atlas. The signals were designed to be scientifically neutral simple pulses used for ranging. For several days, there was no measurable response. But then, on the seventh day, the reflected signal returned with an anomaly, a slight phase shift, as though the echo had been altered mid-flight. The pattern was irregular, but deliberate enough to warrant attention. To some, it was nothing more than an echo distorted by plasma interference. To others, it was the first whisper of communication. At Harvard, Loeb quietly drafted an unpublished paper titled Artifacts in Transit, Statistical Signatures of Non-Natural Origin in Interstellar Objects. In it, he argued that if multiple independent observations showed synchronization between light, motion, and radio output, then the hypothesis of artificiality must be statistically elevated to serious consideration. He sent it to colleagues at NASA, who read it with fascination but refused to endorse it publicly. The world was not ready for the word artifact in an official statement. Meanwhile, the object continued to exhibit strange harmony with solar dynamics. As it moved closer to the Sun, its acceleration subtly adjusted to maintain optimal angular orientation, a behavior that could be described as self-stabilizing. Its reflectivity changed in tandem with solar activity, as if reacting to photon flux. Every time the Sun emitted a coronal flare, 3i Atlas's brightness momentarily spiked, almost as if it were absorbing or channeling that energy. The phenomenon drew comparisons to theoretical solar sails, thin, reflective constructs capable of propulsion through photon momentum. Humanity had built small-scale versions of such sails, like JAXA's Icaros, but nothing approaching this object's endurance or precision. If 3i Atlas was indeed a sail, it was a masterpiece, a vessel designed for journeys across the gulfs of time and space, powered only by the light of stars. As the weeks passed, the conversation between natural and artificial evolved from quiet disagreement to a philosophical divide. Was 3i Atlas the child of nature's random beauty, or the echo of intelligence transcending extinction? No consensus emerged, but one realization grew increasingly difficult to deny. Whether crafted by stars or by minds, it was behaving like something that remembered its purpose the night that the first signal was detected. No one believed it. It started as a faint anomaly, a blip buried deep within the noise floor of a radio telescope in Western Australia. The technician on duty almost dismissed it, thinking it was interference from a passing satellite or a reflection from atmospheric distortion. But then it repeated, perfectly timed, exactly 120 seconds apart, as though following a script written in cosmic precision. The signal was weak, nearly indistinguishable from static, yet it carried a structure that no natural radio emission should possess. A pattern of pulses and silences forming an unmistakable rhythm. A rhythm that echoed the very rotation period of 3 Atlas itself. By the time morning reached the United States, observatories across 3 continents were already whispering about it. At first, the discovery was kept quiet, unverified, unconfirmed, too fragile to announce. But the repetition was undeniable. The narrow-band transmission wasn't random. It had coherence. When spectral analysis was run at the SETI Institute in California, the team noted something peculiar. The pulse intervals weren't just evenly spaced, they were mathematically progressive, shortening by fractions of milliseconds in a logarithmic pattern. To the human ear, if translated into sound, it would have resembled a slow, descending heartbeat. Someone in the control room joked nervously that it sounded like a countdown. Within 48 hours, confirmation arrived from the Parkes Observatory in New South Wales. Their radio arrays had picked up the same pattern, the same frequency, the same interval, the same decay and timing. Only now, it was stronger. The object 3I Atlas, somewhere between the orbits of Mars and Earth, was broadcasting. The discovery sent ripples through the astrophysical community. For the first time, a verified interstellar object appeared to be emitting structured radio pulses. Whether the signal was intentional or accidental was irrelevant. Its existence alone broke the boundaries of what was possible for a supposedly inert mass of rock or metal. The world didn't know. Not yet. The information was sealed within a closed network of agencies. NASA, ESA, and a select group of international observatories. In public, the narrative remained unchanged. 3I Atlas was a fascinating natural visitor, being studied for insights into interstellar chemistry. But behind the curtain, scientists worked sleeplessly to decode what was now being referred to as the Atlas signal. Supercomputers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory ran endless correlation analyses, searching for recognizable sequences, mathematical constants, or any trace of encoded intelligence. What they found was even more unsettling than a message. The signal wasn't carrying data, it was carrying timing. Each pulse coincided with subtle fluctuations in the object's reflectivity, as if light and radio were synchronized. More than that, the interval between pulses was shrinking by a consistent ratio. Extrapolated forward, the countdown appeared to converge toward a specific moment, a 0 point, an instant in the near future when the signal would end. That date fell exactly 43 days ahead, corresponding with the object's closest approach to Earth's orbit. Whatever the countdown was measuring, it seemed to be leading directly to that event. At NASA's Deep Space Network in Goldstone, engineers recalibrated antennas to track the signal around the clock. Every facility capable of deep space reception, from Canberra to Madrid, joined the network in coordinated observation. What had begun as an astrophysical curiosity was now treated like a potential cosmic emergency. The object was silent no longer. It was speaking in numbers, and those numbers were running out. As more observatories joined the effort, the phenomenon grew clearer. The pulses were not just shrinking in time. Their amplitude was modulating in a binary-like pattern, two distinct intensity levels alternating in a sequence that repeated every 12 hours. The repetition mirrored the object's rotation, implying synchronization between internal mechanisms and external emissions. Some speculated it could be a natural magnetic resonance effect caused by interaction with the solar wind, but the pattern's mathematical precision undermined that idea. It was too ordered, too deliberate, too perfect. The public first caught wind of the discovery through an anonymous leak. A short recording, allegedly extracted from an internal NASA server, surfaced online. It contained 30 seconds of static punctuated by rhythmic bursts, soft, slow, then slightly faster. The clip went viral overnight. Conspiracy forums called it proof of extraterrestrial contact. Scientists scrambled to control the narrative, but it was too late. News outlets began running stories about the interstellar countdown, quoting unnamed insiders and speculative experts. Within days, the story became a global phenomenon. The sky was no longer silent. Humanity was listening to a voice from beyond, and it seemed to be counting down to something. In the White House, an emergency science briefing was convened. The president's science advisor, flanked by officials from NASA and the Pentagon, outlined what was known and, more importantly. Meanwhile, a team at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics discovered another anomaly. The signal was not uniform across frequencies. At the lower end of the spectrum, subtle harmonic overtones appeared, faint ripples that repeated in patterns corresponding to prime numbers. It was the mathematical fingerprint of intention, the universal language of logic. Every intelligent species, human or otherwise, would recognize primes. They were not random, not natural. It was as if 3I Atlas were broadcasting a signature that said, "This is deliberate." The effect on the scientific community was electric. Hundreds of research papers were drafted under extreme secrecy, shared only within classified academic circles. Some suggested the object was broadcasting a navigational beacon, marking its position for others across interstellar space. Others proposed a darker idea that the countdown was not a signal to others, but a trigger for itself. A self-activation mechanism designed to awaken after detecting electromagnetic activity from a technological civilization. Humanity, with its constant radio chatter and radar emissions, might have unknowingly switched it on. In late June, another layer of mystery unfolded. Satellites in Earth orbit began recording subtle electromagnetic disturbances during each transmission from 3I Atlas. Something in the object's emission was interacting with Earth's magnetic field across millions of miles. The implications were staggering. The countdown was no longer distant. It was already touching the planet's invisible shield. At CERN in Geneva, particle physicists were drawn into the investigation after unusual anomalies were observed in magnetic resonance experiments. Minute deviations in local field stability, perfectly synchronized with the Atlas signal. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. Some theorized that the object's emissions might be resonating at a frequency capable of coupling with planetary magnetic structures, a cosmic harmonic between the object and Earth itself. It wasn't just broadcasting, it was linking. Public interest spiraled into obsession. Live streams tracked the signal in real time. Websites displayed digital countdowns predicting the supposed 0 point. Now only a month away. Theories multiplied. From apocalyptic prophecies to messages of cosmic awakening, scientists found themselves battling misinformation while secretly struggling with their own doubts. Machine learning algorithms combed through terabytes of spectral data, searching for hidden patterns. One pattern stood out: a faint, periodic subpulse embedded within the main transmission. It repeated every 1.618 intervals. The golden ratio, the elegance of that number, found in everything from the spirals of galaxies to the proportions of human DNA, sent shivers through the teams decoding it. It was as though the universe itself had chosen a signature of beauty to announce its intention. By early July, 3I Atlas had crossed the orbit of Mars, closing in on Earth's orbital path. Its brightness increased slightly, not from reflection, but from emission. Faint luminescence detected in the ultraviolet band. The light pulsed in harmony with the radio countdown. It was the first visual confirmation that the signal and the object were inseparable. Whatever process drove the emission was both electromagnetic and optical, merging physics in a way that suggested technology far beyond human comprehension. Inside mission control centers around the world, tension became a constant. The countdown pointed to a specific moment, August 19, 2025, at 3 hours 16 minutes and 42 seconds UTC. No one knew what would happen at that instant. Theories filled the silence. Maybe the object would pass harmlessly. Maybe it would transmit a final message. Maybe it would unleash a burst of radiation, or perhaps nothing at all. But every night, as astronomers watched the rhythmic flashes blink across their screens, the sense of inevitability grew. The signal was alive, the clock was running, and the world could only wait. As the days dwindled, new symptoms appeared in unexpected places. Magnetometers around the globe began detecting faint oscillations in Earth's field strength. Auroras flickered at unusual latitudes, painting green and violet arcs above cities that had never seen them before. Satellite communications occasionally failed for seconds at a time, always coinciding with the signal peaks. It was as if the very planet was beginning to vibrate in resonance with something vast, distant, and unseen. The phrase "countdown event" entered official documentation. The agency stopped pretending it was noise or coincidence. 3I Atlas was doing something: synchronizing, aligning, preparing. The final analysis, delivered in secret to the world's leading governments, stated what no one wanted to read. The object's emissions were converging toward resonance with Earth's natural magnetic frequency. If the countdown reached 0, the two fields would overlap completely for a fraction of a second, the consequences of which were unknown. The universe, it seemed, had started a clock, and humanity was standing at the edge of its final tick as the countdown from 3I Atlas approached its final stretch. A strange global unease began to settle, not because of any visible threat, but because the Earth itself seemed to be responding. In the beginning, it was subtle. Small anomalies that most people would never notice, dismissed as coincidence or error. Magnetometers stationed in research facilities across the world began recording rhythmic oscillations, perfectly synchronized with the pulses emitted by 3I Atlas. These weren't random disturbances from solar winds or coronal ejections. They carried a fingerprint and unmistakable mathematical resonance that mirrored the interstellar object's transmission frequency. The signal wasn't just reaching Earth, it was coupling with it, harmonizing, as if the planet were an instrument being slowly tuned. At first, scientists assumed instrumentation faults. Data from Iceland, Alaska, Siberia, and Chile all displayed identical interference patterns, a repeating sine wave buried within the magnetic background. When engineers recalibrated and replaced the equipment, the effect persisted. The waveform's amplitude was minuscule, barely measurable, yet it grew stronger by fractions each day. More perplexing was its consistency. Every peak aligned with the next predicted pulse from 3I Atlas. That precision defied randomness. The pattern was too perfect, too deliberate. Soon, their instruments began echoing the same story. Seismic monitors showed faint periodic vibrations deep within Earth's crust, subtle enough to escape human perception but detectable through the sensitive arrays used to track microseismic activity. The frequency matched the signal, a resonance humming through the very bones of the planet. It was as if 3I Atlas wasn't just broadcasting into space. It was playing Earth like a note on a cosmic scale. In laboratories from Los Alamos to Geneva, physicists struggled to explain the phenomenon. Some proposed that the object's radio emissions were triggering electromagnetic induction in Earth's magnetosphere, creating a feedback loop. Others speculated something even stranger: quantum entanglement at a planetary scale, a shared frequency linking two massive bodies across millions of miles. Yet, none of the models fully captured what was unfolding. The energy required to affect Earth's field so precisely was beyond comprehension. The object, small as it appeared, would need to manipulate forces with efficiency rivaling the power output of a star. Then came the auroras. They began in the polar skies, shimmering curtains of light, painting colors never recorded before. Shades of indigo and deep crimson rippled across the Arctic Circle, following no solar activity. There were no flares, no coronal mass ejections, no cause. The lights pulsed in synchronization with the Atlas signal, faint at first, then unmistakable. Astronomers and atmospheric physicists scrambled to explain the anomaly. Some thought it was just ionospheric excitation from electromagnetic interference, but the spectral composition told another story. These auroras contained energy wavelengths unaccounted for by natural interactions. It was as though an external conductor was injecting frequencies into Earth's upper atmosphere, orchestrating light on a global canvas. By now, the phenomenon had become impossible to hide. Amateur astronomers noticed the pulse synchronization. News outlets began reporting the cosmic beat, a rhythmic modulation detected in radio static worldwide. Even FM and AM signals occasionally flickered in time with it, an eerie reminder that the countdown had become part of Earth's electromagnetic fabric. It was no longer just in observatories. It was everywhere, in the hum of electronics, in the background noise of the planet's circuits, in the silent pulse between seconds. The resonance began affecting more than just the magnetic field. Oceanographic instruments started detecting subtle fluctuations in tidal patterns, deviations too small to alter sea levels significantly, but too consistent to dismiss. The tides were oscillating slightly out of phase, as though Earth's gravitational equilibrium was being nudged, millimeter by millimeter. Physicists hypothesized that the magnetic resonance could be influencing the movement of conducting materials within the planet molten iron in the outer core, the very heart of the geomagnetic dynamo. If true, it meant that 3I Atlas was resonating with the physical core of Earth itself. Governments responded by classifying all research. The global scientific community fractured overnight. Open-source data feeds were cut, signals encrypted, publications withdrawn. Yet information still leaked, and speculation exploded online. Was the object a weapon? A probe? A communication? Device gone wrong? The most haunting theory came from a small team at MIT. The resonance wasn't accidental. It was intentional synchronization, a form of frequency locking, the same process that allows two pendulums to swing in harmony, or two tuning forks to vibrate together across a room. But here, the scale was planetary. One of the tuning forks was Earth. The other was something not of Earth. Psychological effects followed soon after. Reports from around the world described people experiencing strange dreams, recurring imagery of spirals, tones, and rhythmic flashes of light. Neurologists began to suspect that the resonance was subtly influencing human brain activity, which operates on electrical oscillations sensitive to electromagnetic interference. Though no concrete evidence was released, EEG studies quietly revealed an unusual spike in theta and delta wave synchronization among test subjects during the pulse intervals. It was as if the human mind, just like the planet, was beginning to vibrate in sympathy with the signal. At this point, 3I Atlas had entered Earth's orbital plane. Its reflected light was visible through powerful telescopes, an oddly metallic glint that didn't scatter sunlight like rock or ice would. Infrared imaging detected structured temperature variations across its surface, geometric patterns that hinted at deliberate design. As it turned, the emitted pulses aligned perfectly with these glowing segments, suggesting internal mechanisms at work. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it was active, controlled, and synchronizing not just with Earth's field, but perhaps with the biology of everything that lived within it. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory launched emergency deep space probes equipped with magnetometers and high-frequency sensors. But by the time they neared trajectory alignment, the resonance effect had intensified beyond expectation. Satellite telemetry began showing transient data corruption during pulse peaks. GPS signals wavered. Communication satellites briefly desynchronized, forcing ground control centers into manual resets. Every 20 minutes, when the strongest pulse hit, entire communication networks experienced subtle phase shifts. They lasted seconds but grew longer each day. At the European Space Agency, physicists developed an experimental model simulating the resonance using a supercomputer cluster in Darmstadt. The results were disturbing. When they simulated the overlapping frequencies of 3I Atlas and Earth's geomagnetic field, the system spontaneously entered a state of harmonic amplification, a feedback loop where both frequencies reinforced each other exponentially. The model predicted that if the countdown reached full synchronization, the amplification could induce an energy surge of unknown magnitude. Theoretically, it could dissipate harmlessly, or it could destabilize the magnetic poles themselves. There was no precedent, no safety margin, no way to predict how a planet-wide resonance event would manifest. Meanwhile, the auroras intensified, spreading beyond the poles. By late July, glowing waves were seen above San Francisco, Tokyo, Madrid, and Buenos Aires. The colors shifted continuously, rippling like heartbeat traces across the sky. Instruments confirmed that the electromagnetic field surrounding Earth was pulsing in visible light, an astonishing and terrifying confirmation that the resonance had reached full global coupling. The planet was no longer just responding to 3I Atlas. It was participating. As the world watched, the countdown ticked closer to zero. Power grids fluctuated under unexplained harmonic loads. Airplane navigation systems required manual correction every few hours. Radio telescopes captured new layers in the signal, faint, secondary modulations resembling language, though indecipherable. The intervals between the pulses continued shrinking. Every model confirmed the same trajectory, complete synchronization. Within days, across think tanks and research facilities, debates raged. Was this a form of communication? A message designed to align a planet's electromagnetic signature before data transmission? Or was it preparation for something else entirely? A transformation, a reconfiguration of energy at a planetary level. The resonance wasn't destructive, not yet, but it was purposeful. It had pattern, structure, rhythm, the traits of design, of intent. In those final weeks, people began to feel it even without instruments. The world seemed to hum. Subtle vibrations resonated through long steel beams, bridges, and towers. Dogs barked at the air. Compasses drifted unpredictably. The Schumann resonance, Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat, had shifted frequency for the first time in recorded history. From 7.83 Hz, it had climbed 8.12 Hz. Matching the projected convergence point of 3I Atlas, planet and object were now oscillating together in near-perfect unison. Astronomers observed something even stranger. The light from distant stars behind 3I Atlas began to distort faintly, bending as if through a gravitational lens. It wasn't mass causing the deflection, but energy, a spatial distortion in the electromagnetic field surrounding the object. Space itself seemed to ripple in tune with the resonance, like waves radiating from a drumhead, struck in perfect rhythm. On August 15th, 4 days before the countdown's predicted end, the object's radio emissions ceased for precisely 1 hour. The silence was deafening. Instruments across the globe fell quiet. The planet's magnetic oscillations continued, but weaker, as though holding their breath. Then, at the end of that hour, the pulses resumed stronger, faster, and accompanied by a faint low-frequency tone that resonated deep in the audio spectrum. The tone was uniform across every receiver, every continent. It was the sound of the resonance completing itself. The motion of 3I Atlas also had philosophical weight. Its unbound orbit symbolized impermanence and transition, a reflection of how even celestial bodies are not confined forever to one home. Just as planets form, drift, and die, so too do fragments of them wander freely, carrying with them traces of their origins. Watching 3I Atlas streak across the void, scientists and dreamers alike were reminded that the cosmos is a place of constant movement. Not stasis, a place where even fragments of lost worlds continue to write their stories in the language of trajectories and time. Its motion, once decoded, becomes poetry written in physics, a narrative that blends determinism and chance into something both mechanical and meaningful. By studying its velocity vector and comparing it with the galactic frame of reference, astronomers discovered that 3I Atlas was moving at a speed typical for objects orbiting within the Milky Way's disk. This suggested it was not an outlier from some violent stellar event, but rather a common traveler, part of the quiet interstellar background. It had likely been ejected gently, rather than explosively, perhaps through the gravitational interactions between forming planets in a distant star system. That gentler ejection might explain its relatively low entry speed and fragile structure, characteristics of a body that drifted away softly instead of being hurled out by a catastrophic collision. Its motion was smooth, not impulsive, the trajectory of a wanderer rather than a refugee. Each measurement of 3I Atlas's motion, its speed, its spin, its tiny accelerations offered scientists data to refine their understanding of interstellar dynamics. These insights would help plan future missions aimed at intercepting or studying such visitors up close. There are already proposals for spacecraft that could launch rapidly to meet the next interstellar object, collecting direct samples or imaging its surface in detail. The motion of 3I Atlas, carefully recorded and modeled, serves as a prototype for these future encounters. By learning how such bodies move, we prepare to meet the next messenger from beyond our sun. As the final observations of 3I Atlas faded into the archives, its motion continued silently into eternity. The data remained, a record of a trajectory that began long before humanity existed and would continue long after. Each point plotted on a graph, each calculation of speed and direction, was a translation of its cosmic journey into human comprehension. Through the mathematics of its path, astronomers glimpsed the grand design of the galaxy, a place where even a small, crumbling object could trace a line of meaning across the infinite expanse. The message hidden in the motion of 3I Atlas was not one of words, but of movement itself, the eternal language of the universe, written in speed, gravity, and light. As 3I Atlas faded back into the silent dark between the stars, it left behind more than dust and data. It left behind a feeling, that quiet reminder that the universe is alive with motion, with exchange, with stories still unfolding in the space between suns. Through every keynote of its discovery, from the first faint detection to the study of its fractured light. Humanity glimpsed not just an object from beyond, but a mirror reflecting our own curiosity, our own longing to understand what lies beyond the horizon of the known. The journey of 3i Atlas became a symbol of our search for connection in the cosmos. It revealed how even a small, crumbling traveler could teach us about gravity, chemistry, and the delicate mechanics that weave the galaxy together. It showed us that the universe is not static, that it breathes, drifts, and exchanges pieces of itself in an endless dance of creation and dissolution. Every fragment that passed through our solar system carried whispers of distant worlds, frozen records of alien suns, and traces of stories written billions of years ago. In the glow of our telescopes, those whispers became data, and that data became understanding. We learned that our solar system is not alone, that it is part of a greater flow of cosmic travelers moving silently between the stars. The study of 3i Atlas and others like it draws humanity toward a new threshold, where interstellar discovery becomes not a distant dream, but an inevitable part of our future. The boundaries between worlds grow softer, the distances less lonely, and perhaps that is what makes these encounters so profoundly human. Each time we turn our eyes to the sky and catch a fleeting visitor from another sun, we are reminded that we, too, are travelers, stardust in motion, drifting through a vast and mysterious universe. The light of 3i Atlas may have dimmed, but its passage will echo in our understanding, our imagination, and in the gentle realization that even across the infinite night, the cosmos still finds a way to reach out and touch us.